Welcome back to Off Ball Takes. This is your host, Yarby Laws, and this is my co-host.
Christopher Wells.
We appreciate all the support on our recent content. The NBA Finals. We're talking about Game 3 here, and it was an interesting game. But before we do start with that, we do have a huge loss in the NBA community. We have the logo, Jerry West, who recently passed away. Very, very prominent player. One of the Laker greats,
Mhm.
and he moved into the executive positions and managing teams as well. And he was stellar at that. He was the reason why Kobe Bryant was drafted to the Lakers, and also the reason why Shaq was a free agent and brought to the Lakers as well. So you have to credit him with a lot of things, obviously championships as well. But, give me your 2 cents on Jerry West and, this
Yeah.
unfortunate loss.
I mean, again, as a Laker fan, right,
Yeah,
I've been to the crypto.com arena and I saw the statue of him there, right? So obviously, historic, iconic player for the Lakers, right? Kind of one of the first, I guess George Mikan won 5 titles, but I know a lot of those were in Minneapolis. So him and
sure.
Elgin Baylor, they were kind of like the first real Los Angeles stars. And they did a lot of great things for the team. And as you already mentioned, right, he was an executive. He put together, the Kobe Shaq teams. Obviously, he also went over to Golden State, right, and helped them get them Durant. I believe he also was behind telling them not to trade Klay Thompson for Kevin Love, right? Then I'm pretty sure he also went over to the Clippers, right?
Yep.
And again, it's unfortunate how that relationship with him and the Lakers ended, right? Where they didn't leave on the best of terms, and unfortunately, I guess they're not really going to be able to repair that relationship, but either way, yeah, and
Yes.
rest in
Rest in
peace
peace,
to
the logo.
Pete Wells,
Big
yeah,
time, man.
but yeah, just truly an iconic player, and you cannot tell the story of the NBA without Jerry West.
Yeah, he's the logo. His nickname kind of speaks for himself. Legendary. Um, like I said, kind of a somber moment, but we do have
Hmm.
Game 3 to talk about. And
Yep.
before we do get started, once again, please don't forget to like and subscribe. We see you guys in the chat. W
Mhm.
Celtics, it's over, y'all boys. That's what it feels like.
Yep.
But once again, please don't forget to like and subscribe and follow us on Instagram and TikTok at the OBT Podcast for more content and updates.
Yeah. So obviously, game three. First off, yeah, shout out to the people in the comments. Also, thank you Miami Heat Zone for doing that collaboration
Yeah,
video with us. Right,
go check that out.
that was put up last night, so you guys can check that out. We put a post in our community tab, so check that out. Um, but game three, right, of the NBA Finals, right, the Boston Celtics win 106-99, get them to 100 subs. Yes, thank you. That is actually our goal.
Yep, that's the
As of
next
right, I
goal.
think never mind. It says 1,000, right? Doesn't it? The heart's in the way. But
Yeah,
either way,
yeah, it was
it's
100.
100. All right, cool. But either way, obviously going into this game, right? Very big game for both teams, right? Dallas was down 0-2. Boston was up 2-0. Boston wins. Series is pretty much over. Dallas wins at home. Still alive. Obviously, still teetering because you'd have to win. You have to win 4 out of 5. But, obviously the Celtics, going into the game, it's kind of a, tough blow initially, right? Because after game two, we saw Porzingis get hurt. Neither you nor I thought he was going to play in this game, right? Because the injury looked bad, couldn't move, he couldn't run, really at all, and couldn't finish the game, right? So obviously that was a concern because of the fact of what he's able to do on both ends of the floor for them. But we both thought Dallas would win game three. We were wrong, but we did kind of balance it out by saying the thing that would swing the Celtics winning that game is if Tatum has a huge game. And obviously Brown was great in the second half as well, right? But kind of him, Brown and Tatum led the way. Tatum in the first half, Brown in the second half, right? And that was kind of enough, to be able to kind of pull away, right? Obviously it was crazy, right? Because Dallas had a big lead, early in the first quarter, right? I think they were up by what, like 12 or so, and then Boston cut it down right at the end of the first quarter. It was a 1 point game. So, same at halftime, right? It was 50-51 Dallas in at the end of the first half. And that was kind of a concern if you're Dallas because you're at home. Luca and Kyrie were playing pretty well in the first half. And you're only up one, right? Because unfortunately, there were a couple other guys for Dallas that didn't play as great. Um, and also defensively, right? You had some rough possessions with Luca, right? He ended up fouling out, right? And that was kind of a rough thing for Dallas in the game. And he didn't shoot that great,
Yeah.
right? 11 for 27. Obviously, he was good the first 2 games. He wasn't as good in this game, but either way, for the Celtics, right? It was kind of funny, right? Because then they built up the big lead at the end of the third, right? They limited Dallas to 19 points in the third, right? They scored 35, and then they're up in the fourth quarter as much as what, 21 points. And then that lead quickly, right, gets whittled down. Dallas cuts it to a 3 point game. But unfortunately, right, and this is the problem with trying to, come back when you're down big, and that's a big, even though we've seen bigger comebacks, they're usually not done in the span of like one quarter, like a 20-point lead in the fourth quarter. That's a lot to overcome. And you have to be perfect, right? And they just couldn't get over the hump, right? Luca fouls out. They miss a couple of shots that could have gotten it back, right? And it's kind of tough because say you take Luca out, you're okay in terms of getting stops. But the issue is that your offense is kind of rough because then it's just Kyrie trying to bail you out, and he was very good in this game. It's just again him playing 1-on-5 offensively late in the fourth is tough. No Porzingis and getting the W is awesome. And that's the thing with Boston is, to be fair, in the postseason, they've had, a lot of experience playing without him because they had to play without him for most of the postseason. Obviously, Dallas is a different team compared to those other teams. But it was just weird, right? But, again, your two guys, right, were great. Your two stars were great in this game, and over the course of a series, right, that's kind of what you hope for, right? Like you hope for like a game where both of your best players are great, right? A game where maybe one of them is great, then another game where the other is great, and then maybe one where it's like all of them. Obviously, it depends, over the course of a series, and it can kind of change from a game to game, series to series basis. But it's a big win for Boston, right? Obviously, if they had lost that game, that would have been pretty bad. It wouldn't have necessarily changed my thought on whether or not they would have won the series because I think
Mhm.
both of us thought that the Celtics were in prime position to win the series before this game. But obviously, it makes it tougher. But now you don't have to worry about it because now you're up 3-0. No team's ever come back from 3-0, and I don't think the Mavs have enough on both ends of the floor to be able to pull that off, anyways, right? Because Woe said before the game that Porzingis is unlikely to come back, but you can probably win 1 out of 4 games, without Porzingis, right? Like
Sure.
even if you don't win game 4 and you're going back to Boston, like you're still going to probably be able to close it out within the next couple of games. So that's how it goes, right? Dallas, they put up a fight in this series, right? You give them credit, but the Celtics were just too much to overcome, which is why we, going into the series, thought they were going to win. Now, I guess we gave Dallas too much credit against the Celtics, right? Because we thought it would be a 6-game series. It might be a 4 or 5 game series.
Yeah.
But either way, I think it just kind of further cements Boston's a very good team, which we already knew. All they had to do was just basically, get it done with the title, and they're one win away from doing that.
Yeah, and it's kind of crazy. Like I think this win, and obviously, once they are crowned the champions, it'll validate a whole lot of things. It'll validate the duo of Jason Tatum, Jalen Brown. Obviously, it'll validate the Jalen Brown extension because going into the season, people were like, "That's robbery. The guy can't even finish with his left." All this stuff, but he's been arguably the best
Best
player.
basketball of his career.
Exactly, best basketball of his career and best basketball player on the Boston Celtics throughout the playoffs. So it's been kind of awesome to see. And then obviously the other guys, the role players, like look at Drew Holiday, look at Derek White. These guys have been showing up night in, night out. Even Al Horford, um, J3, Jalen, Jason, Drew put the Celtics in the driver's seat. Yeah, for sure. Like the series is over now. It's definitely over. Like we thought it was
Mhm.
over last game, but this is the nail in the coffin. Now it could be like a
Yep.
gentleman's sweep situation, but at the end of the day, that still ends up being the Celtics coming out with the victory. So it is wild. Like even a guy like I think another thing that we talked about but didn't highlight too much was who were they going to go to for center depth. Now that they didn't have Porzingis, and then Tillman came in, and I
Right.
thought he played amazing in terms of what he was able to do on the defensive end because he's kind of like a
Plus
guy.
9 in 11 minutes.
Yeah, exactly. So he's kind of like a guy that can match up with Luca, a little bit better defensively in terms of, the build and the size. And, you kind of saw him using his body versus, kind of like reaching around or grabbing at the arm per se, going straight up and kind of just absorbing contact that Luca kind of dishes out. And then obviously him hitting a three was kind of wild as well, considering that was his first three of the postseason. Sam Hauser showing up. I think, the depth kind of showed because I think with Dallas, they reached a little bit too far into their bag in terms of bringing out Jaden Hardy, Dante Exum. But at the end of the day, they didn't play like significant minutes, but they reached deep. Like it was kind of similar to what we saw with Indiana and what they were doing. And we were like, maybe 11, 12 guys is maybe too much to play. And I feel like that's kind of how I felt with Dallas. But Luca was in foul trouble, and I think that's something that was played a huge factor because Dallas could have potentially won this game if Luca closed with Kyrie because, like you talked about, it was kind of awkward seeing Kyrie have to kind of brute force things. And, we know that Kyrie kind of is a guy where not necessarily he takes what's given to him, but he makes things look easy. And I don't know. When he's trying to brute force things, it doesn't necessarily look too good, in my opinion. And that's kind
We
of what
had to. We
happened.
had no choice. We had
Exactly.
no
And
choice.
that's what brute force means, where it's like, you have no choice and you have to try and get the job done. And they just couldn't get it done. Unfortunately, the role players, I think they played okay for Dallas. You know, PJ Washington, I thought he played pretty good, but like Derrick Jones Jr., he didn't really do too much on the offensive end. Daniel
Mhm.
Gafford, I wasn't too happy with either. So, you know, that was kind of striking because I think going into this game, we thought that they would play better. But, you know, at least you know that Kyrie isn't cooked. You know, he still played, I think, a very good game up until those closing minutes. But, you know, if you're Boston,
Yeah.
you're just happy. You know, you've done it
Yeah.
at this point. Just don't take your
Yeah, I
foot off the
think
gas too much.
right. Yeah, and I think for Dallas it's tough, right? Because again, in the fourth quarters, right? Even though Dallas, I guess, has technically won the fourth quarters, right? Like they were playing from behind, and you didn't necessarily get enough from what you would have liked, right? Like there's a stat going out I see from Justin Russo online, right? Where
Hmm.
say Luca in the first three quarters, 81 points, 54%, from the field in the first three quarters in each game. And then in the fourth quarter, 20%, right?
Ah,
8
God,
points, right? So,
it's bad.
that's tough. And again, like, to be fair, it's a rough position, when it's basically him and Kyrie, but, that also is kind of what got them to this point. So, but this is why we talked about why Boston would be able to win this series is because, you know, those two guys offensively, as good as they are, it's still a tough matchup against Boston because they have a lot of different guys that they can throw at them. And they have guys on the other end offensively that they're going to have to try to guard. And, even though they can try at times defensively, it just hasn't worked out. So that's the rough part for Dallas, right? Like this has kind of been a test of like how good is their defense going to be against a team like this?
Yeah.
And their defense, I guess, as a team hasn't been awful, right? But it's just you have a few guys where like say like a Luca where the defense kind of sticks out like a sore thumb. Like some of his fouls I thought, were just not ideal fouls
Silly.
to pull off, right? He had like a frustration foul, I think, after a missed shot that got him to what was it, like four fouls. Then he had the charge, right? That was six. And then even before that, he had the other play where I think he was trying to kind of draw a charge. And
Yeah.
those are just three fouls that I think you just can't pull or try to draw in a game like this where every possession really counts. And,
Right.
maybe Dallas can pull it out if he's out there, right?
Hmm.
We'll never know. But, it's just something to think about over the course of the series. But I think most of the credit should be given to Boston for how good of a team they are.
Yeah.
And, that's kind of ultimately this, the story of this series is that this Boston team is very good. Obviously, this was a weird game, at the same time, but, you give them a lot of credit, right? Because they were able to pull this off. Obviously, again, we said it before going into the finals, right? Two things can be true. One, yeah, they had a cakewalk, but two, they're about to win the title, so it doesn't really matter
Yeah.
at the end of the day.
And you know they've executed, I think, to perfection. You know they know their system, they know what they're doing. The drive and kick off of the 5 out set is insane. You know, you see it multiple times. I think every single one of these guys has the ability to do that, and that's what makes them so dangerous. They take a high volume of threes. It doesn't matter, you know, necessarily how many they take. It's about how many they make, and they made 17 out of their 46, 37%. It's pretty dang good. You know, Jason Tatum, you look around at him, I think he had a better game numbers wise in terms of, you know, the tallies and the totals for points. But you know, you look at Jalen Brown, you're like, my goodness, you know, the Mavs didn't really have an answer for him. And then
No,
already talked about Derek White and his ability to shoot the three, what Drew was doing on the boards. Um, you know, it's tough. You know, and
yeah,
that's why I
I
think we
was.
called them a super team.
Mm,
Or at least I was calling them like a super team light. You know, it's tough because you have guys that can do a lot of things, and this was all without Porzingis, like Homelander said. You know that's the craziest part. Like they aren't even at full strength.
yeah, Dallas. I mean, again, it's just kind of like you said, like they put up a fight. It's just tough because I think they've guarded Tatum, even though he went off in this game. I think they've guarded Tatum relatively well,
Triple
as a
teamed him.
scorer. But obviously, like in the first two games, he was still able to read the floor, and make the passes and doing other stuff, right? But Brown has been the guy that's really been tough for Dallas because again, it's like at a certain point you kind of start running out of guys to put on people, right? Like if you have to put one guy on Tatum, okay, well let's say that guy might be the best defender, right? Then you have to put another guy who's not as good defensively on Brown, or vice versa, right? And then obviously you still have to worry about guys like Derek White and Drew Holiday, where they're not the same offensive players as those guys, but they're still guys that you have to guard, right?
Yeah,
Like the only guy in the lineup that was getting minutes that you quote unquote don't necessarily have to guard was Xavier Tillman, but everybody else you have to pay attention to offensively, and even he ended up making a three, right? And I think they said he's a 28% 3-point shooter.
yeah, he's not good at
Ponies headed to Cancun, according to Keith Wells.
it. Yeah, but like it's wild. considering the personnel and what they're able to do. Um, we already talked about the execution. There's not a whole lot to say except for the fact that it's over. You know, I
Right.
mean, you could
Yeah.
highlight some things that Dallas did well in terms of we were half right. We didn't think Kyrie was going to have 3 bad games in a row. We predicted that Dallas is going to win this game, and they could have. They just didn't execute the way that they should have, and I think it comes down to that depth, which is something that we talked about. Like we even saw Tim Hardaway Jr. appearance, and he didn't do anything. He put up 0 points in 15 or 19 minutes, minus 16 plus minus. So pretty much when he was out there, they were losing. Um, you look around, you just didn't get anything from the bench except for Lively. I think you like what Lively has been able to do throughout the
Yeah.
postseason, and especially in this game. He's their energy guy. But outside of that, it was slim pickings, and that's the tough part, especially when Luca fouls out. Like that's when it's pretty much over.
Yeah, because it's just you don't really have any other guards you can put out there, offensively that can really do much for you, right? Because that's kind of, I guess, what Hardy's supposed to be. He was pretty much unplayable in this series. Hardaway can shoot, and sometimes he can heat up, but he just has been completely cold for a while, right? Like
Yeah,
the last time he probably had a decent offensive game, I want to say was in the OKC series, which was a while ago at this point, right? So, and that's kind of a tough part. But again, with Boston, versus, a team like Dallas. This is why, with Dallas, it's tough. I think, we don't usually see teams make deals at the deadline, that really kind of reshape the roster and then they win the title. Like we'll see them usually be better and be good enough maybe to make the finals, like Boston, right? The first time they went to the finals, right? They
hmm
made the Derek White trade and they got to the finals, right? Because the first half that year they weren't actually even a good team. They were a playing team.
right.
Then they trade for Derek White. They gave away what Dennis Schroeder, and Josh Richardson, and then they ended up making the finals. They lost to Golden State, but either way, that's the tough part, right? Cleveland the first year, I think against Golden State, right? They made the trades where it was like J.R. Smith, Iman Shumpert, Mozgov, and they lost that first year, right?
Yeah,
Obviously they had injuries, but still, that you don't usually do that, in the first year, right? I guess for Dallas, and we can talk more about what their offseason stuff could be like once the series is over, right? But you can
it's
still
over.
build on.
We might as
Yeah.
well.
You know what I mean? Like,
I know.
but you know what I mean?
Let's
Like,
talk about it
uh,
lightly. Let's touch it.
yeah, okay. Well, I guess the main thing is like your team is still good. It's just
Sure.
the tough part is, if you come out of this series without a chip, you know, are you coming out of the West again next season? Like that might be very difficult because of how good the West is. You don't
Right.
expect Dallas to really drop off. Like honestly, record wise, they could have a better, season in terms of wins because they're starting with a better team compared to what they were starting with earlier in the year. But, again, that would still be a tall task to, come out of the West again.
Yeah.
Obviously it's about matchups, but I guess to be fair, your starting point in the offseason is better, right? So you could probably be like, maybe we can see what we can get for Hardaway, or maybe we can take one of those other young guys, see if we can bring in somebody because they're not in the second apron or anything. So their roster's not that expensive. So they could probably bring somebody in. I would assume they're going to re-sign Derek Jones Jr. But either way, I think if you could get some type of like third wing guard type player, right? Like just somebody that can play next to Luca and Kyrie, sort of as a wing, that I guess could kind of offer some more shooting than Derek Jones Jr. Even though to be fair, he played well for
Yeah.
most of the postseason, but just to have like another option, and also like maybe a stretch big, right? Although you could say maybe it's Maxi Kleba, like if he doesn't have a separated shoulder,
Yeah.
maybe
True.
he plays better. But
I
stuff
don't
like
know.
that. But I
It's
don't know. But it's gonna be tough because the Western Conference, there's so many good teams
yeah.
that you're gonna have to go through this again, right? And you're gonna have to see what happens, and that might be tough because we know the Western Conference is only gonna be better next year, right? Like the East could be better, but realistically, Boston could still come back, right?
Yeah.
Like even if they don't win back to back, they can still make a run to the finals again.
Yeah.
But I don't know if Dallas will be back in the NBA Finals again next season. Like it's possible because you have Luca, um, and you have a good team around him. But I don't know if I would bet on them coming out of the West again next season, right? Because we didn't expect them to come out of the West this time. They were of the lower seeds, kind of our dark horse type team that could potentially make it. We didn't
Sure.
expect them to, but if you were to pick a lower seeded team that had the highest ceiling, it was probably the Mavs. But
Mavs have peaked. That's an
Yeah,
interesting take.
like
I
yeah,
mean,
because that's the thing. But like but because that's the thing. Like against another team in the East, they might do better.
yeah,
But against the Celtics team, I just think it's very difficult because I just don't know if they have enough to match up with them, right?
I'm
Because like the
yeah,
Celtics, right? Like they could be like I don't know if they'll be quote unquote better, but like they could be because Tatum and Brown could be a little better, right? They could have a healthier Porzingis next year. But for Dallas, I don't know how much better they can really be. I would have to see what they do with the roster because there's a couple of guys that they can move and switch around. But I don't know who they would specifically go after. But they have a little bit more flexibility salary wise because they're not in that second apron. But they've given up picks to get a lot of these other guys, so I don't think they have too many more picks to give up. So it could
yeah.
be tough.
I mean, if they run it back with this roster, then I for sure think they peaked. Like this is probably their limit. In terms of
Yeah,
getting to the finals. Sure, they could do it again, but winning the
lucky.
finals, I don't think they could win the finals with this roster.
Not again. Yeah, not if it's the Celtics. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like maybe some other East team,
yeah,
but
but the likelihood that another East team is going to get there is very slim.
right.
Couldn't
Yeah,
if all these teams run it back and
yeah,
there's no
and
significant waves or changes, you
yeah,
know?
and you still have to get out of the West, so that's the
Yeah,
other tough part too.
because I think the West, like, if you're gonna look at it, we're probably gonna see a different representative from the Western Conference probably every single year. That's just how good
Because
all these teams are gonna be. And then you have the rotations, you have other guys who are gonna be showing up. It's gonna be crazy.
yeah, because I mean, all the teams that were there, other than Dallas, right, will still be here, right? Like
Right.
Minnesota's still gonna be good. Denver will still be good.
Okay. See.
Everyone else, OKC, yeah, OKC's still gonna be good.
Yeah.
And then after that, right, some of those teams in that next tier might get worse, right? Like maybe the Clippers get worse.
Sure.
Maybe the Suns or the Lakers or Golden State, maybe they're worse or stay the same. I don't know.
Sure.
Um, but then even at the bottom of the West, right? Like the Spurs will be better. Like they still probably won't be good, but they'll
No.
be a team where it's like it's not a free win, right? So the only probably horrible team in the West next season will probably be, if I had to guess, like Portland or Utah or something like
Sure.
that. And
No
no
wing
wing
wants to
wants
play
to
with two
play.
gunners.
Well,
I
the
mean,
thing
if
is
they're
that
two-way guys, then yeah.
yeah, I think if they're yeah, because like Derek Jones Jr., I mean, he's a two-way guy. He's just not as good of a outside shooter. But I
Right.
think the thing is that like those guys make it easy for those guys. Like PJ Washington, as good as he was in Charlotte, right? Like this is some very good basketball that he's played over the course, of his time in Dallas and in the postseason because he's able to play off of two guys where he doesn't have to do as much in terms of creation. He can just spot up and shoot and he can defend. Like I mean, and
And he crashes the
for
corner boards, which is
and he can
awesome.
crash the quarters. Yeah, so that's the thing. I don't necessarily like. I think that would probably be more like maybe a star, might not necessarily, but
Yeah.
I don't necessarily know if I would look at them as gunners. Like, you know what I mean? Like they do shoot a lot, but I think like they also are guys where it's like they are good enough to where they can use their scoring ability to make things
Not,
easier for everyone
not
else.
so fun fact. Hardaway has not scored since May 18th.
Thank you,
Yeah.
Default 23, because I
Great
didn't.
fact, bro.
Yeah, because I was saying like it felt like he hadn't scored in forever. I'm pretty sure May 18th, so that was a month ago. So that's got to be the OKC series, right?
That's
Or
crazy,
is
bro.
it like early Minnesota series? It might be early Minnesota.
That's
Definition of
crazy.
just collecting a paycheck to do cardio. Yeah, wasn't good in this series. Now, to be
Yeah.
fair,
Stunk it
I
up,
guess you
bro.
got to look at it. Yeah. I guess to be fair, he probably, once you got the other guys, you didn't really need him as much. Like,
Sure.
anyways, because at one point he was a starter for them. During the years where they were like kind of a middling team.
Yes.
But now you don't really, that's a heat check guy now. But you don't want to necessarily have, whatever his salary is, right? Like I think it's like a mid-tier salary.
Okay, see, he made
OKC,
a
so it
layup.
was
That's
OKC. I knew it was like
crazy, bro.
I knew it was OKC. I was because just time wise, I knew it had been forever. Because I was saying that I was like, I swear the last time he had hit anything was against OKC. Because I remember he had the 10-point quarter in the third or whatever it was,
Yeah.
or fourth against OKC off double team on Luca and he had nobody there. Yeah, that's the tough part is that some of the shots just haven't fallen. But Boston has done a really good job of taking away some of what Dallas likes to do, right? Like they took away the lobs, they took away the corner threes. They're not there. So
Yeah.
then that kind of forces like PJ Washington into doing more stuff on offense than you would probably like, where he's kind of like, trying to play off the dribble and post up and create. How do you play 42 minutes and not have a single point? Also had no assists and 4 total rebounds. So I'm assuming that's like over the course of this series, right? Like
Yeah.
42 minutes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean that yeah, he's had a bad series. And Again, when you're going against Boston, where their starting five with or without Porzingis is very good, you like the only way you can really counter that is if you have somebody off the bench who, is not maybe they don't necessarily outplay the starters, but they can, kind of add into whatever you have in your group, right? But they, yeah, they didn't really get a whole lot of bench help this series. Lively had a good game, but that was it.
That's since his
Yeah,
last
like,
basket. Wow.
jeez. Oh my goodness.
That's
Okay,
even
yeah,
worse.
yeah. I
So
mean, and that's
Minnesota
pretty much
and Boston. Oh my.
yeah. Yeah, so and that's pretty much what his role is, out there. Now, again, nobody's gonna say the reason they lost this series is because of Tim Hardaway Jr., right? Like that's not, we're not trying to single him out. It's just again, if you're Dallas, you have to probably have more than what Boston needs because you're not as good of a team.
Yeah.
So in order to balance out like what Tatum and Brown and everybody else can give them, you would have to have somebody off the bench that can give you something. And yeah, that didn't happen, right? Like
Yeah.
this was Lively's best game, but the first two games he was pretty much invisible.
Yeah. And
Um,
that's because Porzingis was out there. But,
yeah, and that's because Porzingis was out there and he
yeah.
made it tougher, for them, defensively. So, it's just rough because in Dallas, like, it's tough because in two of these games, you probably played well enough to have a chance to win,
Hmm.
but Boston was better, right? And the stuff that we talked about, like, what does it look like if it's a close game in the fourth quarter? But Boston was better in the fourth quarter. Right now, to be fair, this fourth quarter was pretty nasty
Yeah.
for most of it, right? It was like they went up by 20. It looked like they were about to throw it away and give it right back to Dallas, but they learned, right? Because that's what happened to them against Golden State, right? Where they had where they had good games. Then in the fourth, they just fell apart, turned the ball over, took horrible shots. But it didn't happen this time, right? Like it's a better team. Those guys are more experienced, and I mean, is this Dallas team as good as that Golden State team? Like that Golden State team is that
Mm,
better?
I don't know. I feel like that Golden State team was a little bit better. The
Yeah,
only
I
reason
think
I would say that is because, like, Curry was still in that era where, like,
right.
he was, like, one of those guys. He still is one of those
Yeah.
guys, but, like, he was like that.
He
And
was a
then,
top yeah, he was a top 3, 5 guy at that
yeah.
point, and now he's probably, like, in the bottom half of the top 10.
Yeah, and then you
But
had Wiggins who was playing like
yeah,
just dominating, and then Wolves
Wolves
nuked
nuked
Nuggets, Mavs nuked Wolves, Celtics nuked
nuked
Mavs.
Mavs. Yeah,
Pretty
basically.
much, bro. That's the chain of
Yeah,
events, man.
right. Yeah,
To
'cause
put it
and
in
it's
short
funny, right?
terms.
Yeah, because you think about, the East versus the Western Conference, and,
Yeah,
the Western Conference has usually been dubbed the stronger conference. But this year the champion is gonna be an Eastern Conference team, right?
it's just
Because
because the
obviously
Celtics are that good, man.
yeah,
They
yeah.
execute,
Last
bro.
year Yeah, last year was the Nuggets.
Hmm.
Year before it was Golden State. Year before that it was Milwaukee, right? So
Yeah,
that team broke up the trend, and then before that it was the Lakers,
yeah.
and then I guess before that the Raptors, and then Warriors. So, um,
But I think that Golden
y-
State team was better though. You had
yeah,
like you had
yeah, and I
Wiggins, you had
yeah,
Curry, Clay,
and I
Dre,
guess
and you had Poole
yeah,
coming off the bench. Like it was
right,
better.
and I guess this Boston team is better than the other Boston team for sure.
Oh, 100%, bro.
Yeah,
Look at
exactly.
also the system that they run too. It's very different. Like it's
Yeah,
similar, but
offense.
it's also different. Like
Yeah, the offense is better
I know I'm picking on Tim Hardaway Jr., but Josh Giddey has scored more recently and gotten
recently.
assists since him. Yeah,
Yeah, I
that's
mean,
wild, bro. And
but yeah,
his name is out there in rumors too.
right. Yeah, and that's the thing, like you said, like, we know you're not picking on him, because obviously it's a team game,
You're
but
right, right.
for a team like Dallas where you're not as good as Boston, like you do need some of those other guys that can kind of just come out of nowhere and have a random game, right? Like they don't have a Jordan Poole guy, coming off the bench that just could give them, in a game or two, like 15, 20 points.
Yeah.
Right. It's built around Luca and Kyrie, but a team like that can get shut down by Boston, right? There are other teams that could probably match up better against Boston. Like if it's a team that can, attack the basket, I think a little bit more, I don't know, consistently than say Dallas does, right? Where Dallas is a little bit more of a perimeter oriented team. I know they have the lobs, but they do take a lot of threes. Um, I think the Nuggets would be a better matchup against Boston, but they're not here. So,
Yeah,
but
it's
again,
kind of hard to talk about
right.
hypotheticals because my question
Exactly.
would be like, who's actually able to rotate, with the ball movement that the Boston Celtics
Right.
do execute with. And it's like in this game, a lot of the threes that they took were not very contested. Maybe Jalen Brown's, but a lot of
Yeah.
them were wide open. Maybe like Jalen
Yeah.
Brown and Jason Tatum's threes were probably the only ones that were super duper contested. But early
Hmm.
on, like they were not hitting threes, and that is kind of how their games go. Like the ebb and flow is like once they start hitting threes, they're pretty much unbeatable because of that ball movement and that 5 out
Right.
set that they run. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, in this game they shot 37% from three, and we were waiting for it because the
Yeah.
first two games they shot very poorly from three.
Yeah.
But then in this game they shot, well from three, right? 37%,
Hmm.
46 attempts. That's a good percentage. And
Yeah.
Dallas shot 36%, which is not bad, right? But it's also significantly less attempts. They took
Right.
25, and shot 36% compared to 37% on 46. So Boston took 20 more threes and they shot basically the same percentage, 1% better. Miami Heat Network, what I say? Yeah, he was
There
the
you
one
go.
that basically Celtics in five, right? He thought, that that Dallas probably just didn't really have much of an answer,
Yeah.
for what Boston could do, right? Because that's the thing. Like we also picked Boston, but we thought it'd be a more competitive series, but it wasn't, right? Boston basically has just owned them, and again, Porzingis didn't play in this game, and it's not like he's playing 30 plus minutes a game, even in the first two games, right? It was like 20 something minutes off the bench.
Yeah.
So there's a version of this series where if you play it again, right? Or play through this postseason again, and it's Boston Dallas where Porzingis isn't hurt, he's starting, and then maybe it's even a more dominant 3-0,
Yeah.
series.
You're
So
right. You're right. It's crazy. Like where do we even go from here? Like we kind of have
right,
to like fast forward to next season. We're not gonna do that now, but like, oh my god, like
I
it's
guess
over.
the question is, and I guess anybody in the chat can answer this if they want. Like, where does this Celtics team, of course, assuming they win the championship, right? Where do they rank in terms of an all-time team, right? Because they've won 64
Hmm.
games in the regular season,
Okay.
right? In the postseason, they are what, 15-2, right? So, obviously that's pretty good, right? They've only lost two games all playoffs. Oh, default 23. My last one on Tim. LOL. These playoffs, he played 159 minutes total and finished with 46 points. Take away the one OKC game where he scored 17, it's 29 points in 143 minutes. Yeah, that's bad. Hauser is better than Tim Hardaway Jr. Um, yeah,
Right now, yeah.
right now, yeah. Okay, Tim, I am sorry. That was my last one. It's all good. But yeah, so where do we think that this team ranks? Because there are some people that feel like that this should belong, in an all-time category. Feel like that's more so Boston fans and like general consensus.
Hmm.
But what do you think? In terms of like, would you say that this is an all-time great team, or
Um.
do you think more so just like it's a really good team, but maybe not like one of the best teams ever? You know what I mean?
Um. I would probably say they're an all time team. Like if we're putting all personal biases aside, yeah, for sure. I think statistically and what they're able to do efficiently on both ends of the floor, I think it's unmatched, especially in today's modern NBA. It's awesome to see, and like I've said, I've called them a super team. Like yeah, D White and Drew Holiday may not have the flashiest game, but there's not a lot of teams with two elite perimeter defenders like that, that have won a championship alongside, Jason Tatum and Jalen Brown, who also have been stellar defenders as well. And you add on Kristaps Porzingis, like that's the biggest kind of what if and unknown is like, what if that guy just didn't miss any time in the postseason like the rest of them, you know?
Yeah,
And
yeah.
like,
I guess that's.
I guess you could probably delve even deeper into it. Like, I could probably look up advanced statistics on them right now.
I mean, they had the point differential during the regular season,
Yeah,
right? Obviously, they had a bunch of guys shooting, very high percentages from three and making on high attempts. So,
right.
it's a very good team.
Yeah, like they just, I feel like they kind of just outrank everybody this season. Now, I
Like,
guess like we could you could say you're getting ahead of yourself, like calling them an all time team just because of
mhm,
one good season. But I don't know.
right.
I think there's just a different kind of feeling about them because
So I guess the question is that let's say we compare them to the last, 5, 6 different champions, right? So
okay,
ignore, obviously the Durant Warriors. So all the title
okay,
winners since, then, right? So Raptors, Lakers, Bucks, Warriors, Nuggets, Celtics. Which one do you think this team is better than those other ones?
Raptors.
Right? Because those are all. What do you mean?
I would say they're better than the Raptors.
Okay.
That's one of them. I
Okay.
wouldn't.
Are
I
they
don't
better
know. I
than?
don't know how I feel about the Nuggets one though. I don't know. That's a tough
Okay.
one.
Do
Do
you
you
trade
trade Porzingis?
Porzingis?
No,
No, I don't.
no, 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 no. You have
No,
to keep
no,
him.
no.
You have to
Yeah,
keep him, bro.
no.
You got him
No,
for a steal.
they already
You
signed
got him,
him
bro.
to an extension. They're going to keep him because I think you look at it as even with his injury history, he's still a better player than the guy they had before at center, Robert Williams, who's
Yes.
also injury prone as well. I think even honestly even more injury prone. So I think you keep him, and like you still will need him to win regular season games
Yeah, I was
anyways. He
gonna say
doesn't
that.
have to play 82 games in the regular season. As long as you can get them to play, probably 60-ish games, and then at
Yeah.
least have them for most of the postseason, especially when it counts, right? Then you're probably fine. Like I don't think the Celtics would regret, making that trade because, it helped make them a championship team.
Yeah. Yeah. I
But I
don't know.
mean,
I would just call them because,
right.
like, well, let's look at it in offensive rating. Like, they ranked what, second in for this season? Defensive rating, they ranked third.
I think that's
Boston,
still
that
like
is.
the second best offensive rating of all time because I think the Pacers were one, but they were also one all time, and I think
Right.
Celtics were right behind them.
That's why I
So
feel
they're
like you have to put them as like an all-time team, just considering their statistics. Like I said, personal bias aside. Um, yeah, and they're better than the Raptors.
yeah,
I, th- I don't know how I feel. I don't know. I don't know if they're better than the Warriors one. From
right.
um, what was it, 2022?
Yeah, I guess. Yeah, I don't because like I think the
That's a
thing
tough one,
is,
bro.
yeah, I think the thing is that is kind of weird is that like say of those title teams, right? Maybe you would say Tatum might be quote unquote like the worst of the best players on the title teams,
Sure.
but like he's still good. But also the
Yeah.
team itself may be better than some of those other teams, right? Like say
Exactly.
like like maybe you might say that Tatum isn't a better player than 2020 LeBron and AD, but this Celtics team is probably better than that Lakers team.
Yeah.
Just
Okay.
at least in terms of talent. Maybe they don't have the same, you know, talent at the top, but they have a better, group. When we making a video or stream, man, you just let us know
Yeah,
because
just hit us up, bro. We're pretty much free. Not all the time, obviously, but
yeah,
we can make it work.
yeah,
Obviously, just hit us up,
yeah,
DM us on the gram. Either one of us, you got our
yeah.
stuff.
Like we said, mainly during the night time, I think is
Yeah,
probably the best time.
we do have the draft stream coming up in a couple of weeks, so I know you're locked in for that. So,
Yeah,
what was the other thing I was gonna say? Yeah, like look at the Raptors, bro. Like what was it, 2019 Raptors that won the
yeah,
chip. I
hmm
think Jalen Brown and Jason Tatum are a better duo than what Kawhi Leonard and Pascal Siakam. You know,
hmm
you know what I mean. That's how I feel. Like I feel like
yeah,
this team is a little bit more like better
right.
constructed than that team, and
And I
that
guess
might be
some
a little
people,
bit of recency bias, but
yeah, and I guess some people would say for the Raptors, like that was a year where what was it? That was the Durant and Clay Thompson injury,
yeah,
right?
yeah. You want to
Yeah,
talk
so
about a cakewalk?
right. So that yeah, well I mean the thing is like I guess they quote unquote struggled more, but by the time they got to the finals, they got, they were
Yeah,
kind of
they had
like
an easy finals path, if you
yeah,
ask me. Well, okay,
right.
easy finals opponent, if you ask me.
Yeah. Yeah, so that's where it's like I would probably I don't know, like I don't want to take away at all from what they did. I just feel like, it's a little bit different. But to be fair, every team that wins a title you can say had something go their way, right? Like this Boston team, right, had stuff go their way.
Mhm.
For sure. And then after that, right, so we have, Bubble Lakers, we already talked about that. Milwaukee Bucks 2022. What do you think?
Mm, no, I think Giannis
Okay.
was balling on a different level.
Right. Like that
Andrew was
like that
better. Middleton was
right.
decent. Well, not just
Okay.
decent, but good. Um,
Mm,
that team, I think they would beat them, and they have the size. You had
Okay.
Portis.
And
You had
then
what, Brooke Lopez. Yeah, they were
yeah.
nice.
Yeah, Portis off the bench.
Yeah,
I think Tucker started as well
yeah,
because
he was
Divac was
actually
hurt.
doing good. Yeah, that was when he was
Yeah,
good.
and then after that Nuggets. What do
No,
we think?
no.
Yeah, I think because last year's version of Jamal Murray I think would be good enough.
Yeah, he was different.
Where and then Jokic I think that factor you'd have because you'd have to try to put Porzingis on him.
Yeah,
Um, and then then that kind of opens stuff up for everyone else. So that would
yeah,
probably be tough. Um, so I mean, yeah. So that's the thing. So that's where it's like if they're not, if you're still gonna have a few teams above them, that's where we may not be able to put them in the all time category because I don't know if any of those teams would be looked at as like all time great teams.
yeah. I don't know. I feel like the Kawhi one maybe just because like what that was Toronto's first chip, right?
Right? Yeah.
I don't know. Like if you want to look at
First
it
and
from a historical um aspect,
mhm,
then I guess you probably have to put Toronto there.
mhm,
Milwaukee, I don't know. It was just because Giannis was on a tear,
right.
man. Like that was like his year.
hmm
I don't know.
Yeah.
That's tough.
Yeah. And I guess they had some things. Yeah. And again, just like the Raptors had some things go their way. That Bucks team had some stuff go their way, right? Because that was the Brooklyn injury thing fiasco, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, man, Boston should win the next two. I mean, it's tough because I feel like we've probably learned our lesson about just assuming a team would go back to back. Like I said, it's crazy because the Celtics were my pick going into the year to win the title,
Hmm.
not in the playoffs, but like I said, I can't really take a victory lap, so I should have just stuck with the Celtics pick. It's just hard because again, like in terms of winning the next, two, you have to stay healthy. So but I guess to be fair for Boston, their two main guys, right, Tatum and Brown are pretty healthy for the most part, right? They don't usually miss a lot of significant time. So as
Yeah.
long as those guys are healthy, you should probably win, especially in the East, right? Like 50 something plus games every year. So, I guess there's no reason why they shouldn't be one of the favorites, if not the favorite to win it next year, right? Unless there's some team that makes some move that I don't see coming, right? Like they're probably going to be the favorites next year.
Because they're
But
probably
they
going to
have,
keep
but
all their guys, right?
yeah, because they're
They don't
gonna
have any
sign
crazy free
Tatum, I think,
agents.
to an extension. They already signed Brown to the extension last year. Holiday was given the extension, I think, right at the end of this regular season.
Hmm.
And then after that, who else? Derek White. I guess he will be probably next up at some point for an extension,
Yeah.
right?
They're
'Cause
running
you're
it
gonna
back,
feel,
bro.
yeah, you're gonna feel better about you're gonna feel better about paying for this roster, especially coming off a title. It'll be tougher because once they're in that second apron for multiple seasons, they won't be able to add on, and they're gonna lose some stuff. Like they're gonna lose picks, they're gonna lose the ability to sign certain types of players. So that might be tough. But one is already worth it. You know what I mean? Like you would do what they did in the offseason 10 times out of 10.
Yeah, 100%. Um, I guess the next thing to cover would be predictions for game 4. I think we know how this is going to go.
Yeah. I
Boston for
mean,
me. I think they get
yeah,
swept. I think Dallas gets swept now.
yeah, I think so too. I think after having two games, in games, what was it, 2 and 3, where you had a chance to win, but you just came up short, right? It almost feels like it might be a game where like Boston kind of just comes out of the gates firing. Maybe Dallas has like a quote unquote stay alive game, but it just feels like after that, you know, I don't know.
I don't believe in
You
them
would
anymore.
need, yeah, because it's tough. Because again, you got the first two games, you got, you know, decent Luca games, but not great Kyrie games. This game was a pretty good Kyrie game, a not great Luca game. So, the only scenario where they probably win is if both of them are great. And it just feels like one or the other Boston's been able to do a decent job of. And when it's in the fourth quarter, they're able to do that. Man, this nonsense Dallas can come back is so lame.
And
I
that's
don't
not
think
what
they're
we're
going to come
saying,
back
bro.
and win the
It's
series at
over
all. Like I said, I would lean towards the sweep for sure. You know what I mean?
at
I don't,
this
is
point. It's
anybody
3-0.
actually saying can come back from 3-0? Like I know the players are not going to say it's over, we're done, but like I like this is done. You know what I
People,
mean?
I
Like
mean,
and
people are, the Boston haters are saying it,
right.
you know?
I mean like cuz it was like last series, right? When what was it? Minnesota was down 3-0. They won game 4. And then there was all of a sudden a conversation about can they come back, and it's like no. When you're down 3-0, it's done. No team has ever come back from a 3-0 deficit. It will happen maybe at some point, but it'll
Hmm.
happen either when we least expect it, or it would have to be a scenario where there's some horrible injury luck that ends up happening, right? Where like
Yeah.
all of your best guys end up getting hurt.
It would
Like,
have to be
oh
like
yeah, Twitter.
the Durant Warriors, bro. It would have to be
Yeah,
just like that.
right. Yeah, Twitter. Oh my goodness.
Yeah,
I mean,
stay away from NBA Twitter, bro. It's a
well, I mean, if you
cesspool of
want
just
laughs, you
darkness,
can go
bro.
there. I mean, like if you want laughs, you can go there. And to be honest, like sometimes, like
But
it's
people
kind of
think they have
funny to.
good takes on there, though. They're horrible takes.
I know, but like, yeah, no, this is done. Anybody who thinks that they can come back is just either not serious or they're just I don't even know. I don't know what to call them, but
Yeah,
this
man.
this series is done.
Yeah,
And
we got to be real here.
yeah, because like I said, maybe someday it'll happen where a team comes back down from 0-3, but not this team. Like I said, unless some horrific injury things happen, which again, like the chances of that happening
Unless
just
Tatum
don't
and
seem that.
Brown get injured, like it's done. Yeah, come on, bro. Like we
Yeah,
got to
and
be real
even
here.
then, you could just have a random game where like even like some of the bench guys just come up out of nowhere and
Yeah,
just
what if
get a
D White
see.
reverts to that like insane mode that we saw him in earlier?
Yeah, exactly. Like and yeah, so that's the thing, right? So I mean,
Yeah.
I don't know. Like I said, I it's just funny because I don't know where that came from, but again,
Like you said, Twitter, bro. I mean,
yeah,
that does not
congratulations.
surprise me.
Yeah, but congratulations to the Celtics. I guess they're about to win their 18th title.
Yes, sir.
So they're gonna have so they're gonna take the lead over the Lakers, right, for the most titles in the NBA.
Yep.
So yeah, so
It is what it is.
yeah.
I mean,
Hmm.
do we have any rumors to cover? Like anything else going on in the NBA? Because I'm trying to think. Like this conversation is pretty much a wrap. There's nothing you can
Yeah,
really
and
say.
it's
We
kind of
gave our
funny.
predictions for Game 4. We already talked about
Tillman
this game.
Tillman hit a huge three.
Yeah, that was
Yeah,
hilarious. When that went in,
that was
I thought that was Al Horford for a second, and
right.
then I
Yeah, I
was
thought
like,
it
"It's
was Al Horford,
Tillman."
and then it was funny because like the commentator, after about 30 seconds or so, Hauser was huge on defense. Yeah, that's the thing.
In
That's why he's
offense,
getting minutes, and
in
that's the
offense,
nice thing to be able to have a guy who can shoot but can also defend at a relatively solid rate
they don't
because
hide anybody, bro.
yeah, because even if he's not hitting his shots, he's still making a positive impact out there, right? Like obviously it's a different level, but say Tatum in the 2 games where couldn't hit the side of a barn, he still had a positive impact because he was doing other stuff,
Yeah,
boards and passing. But yeah, I don't know what other, and it's kind of funny because where another question anybody can answer, where would we, and I guess, it's kind of funny to ask these questions, because then we're probably not going to have as many questions once the series is over.
mm,
But where do we even rank these finals? Because this was a final series that I think a lot of people were hyping up and anticipating,
yeah.
but it ended up kind of being a dud. Obviously, like if you're the Celtics, if you're a Celtics fan, his prop was at point 0.5 easy cash, I'm sure. Yeah, because like he had missed a decent amount of threes for a while. So at a certain point, you figured like at some point he would hit.
Yeah.
But either way, um, this was a pretty hyped up finals, and like I said, it kind of ended up being a dud, right? Obviously, you had two close games, but it was certainly not the quote unquote back and forth, super entertaining series that I think some people may have expected. Like we had some really good plays from Boston, like in terms of the Brown dunks and whatnot, but yeah, I don't think it was quite as competitive as I think some people expected. Again, we both thought the Celtics would win the series, but even us, we thought that it would be a longer series. But shout out Trenton of Miami Heat Network, right? So
Yeah. I mean, like from an entertainment point of view and like a competitiveness point of view, yeah, I could see why people would like rank this like bottom of the barrel. But I think, if you actually enjoy basketball, if you really
right,
enjoy watching basketball, I think you can appreciate the greatness of the Boston Celtics in this run. And
the
like
way
I talked about, the way they played, the way they've executed, even Missoula's coaching. They never really faltered from their game plan. They never got um, the chance to really be knocked off of their game, which is kind of cool to see. Like normally you see teams kind of have to make adjustments on the fly. That's why we have, some series where they got put to game sevens, game sixes, stuff like that. But, if you're able to potentially pull off a sweep in the NBA finals, I think that's something that kind of shouldn't go unnoticed and definitely shouldn't have a negative connotation to, you know, I guess like the enjoyment factor of the finals. Like I've enjoyed it because it's been awesome to see what Boston's been able to do on both ends of the floor. It's kind of
and because our pick is
scary.
right,
What'd you say?
and because our pick is right.
Yeah, exactly. And because we're right. Like a bunch of
Yeah.
people on TikTok were telling us, yeah, Mavs in 5. Yeah, right.
Yeah, well, I mean, it might be 5, but it won't be Mavs in 5. So
That's what I'm saying, bro. And then people were
yeah,
like,
and
it's
like I
one
said,
game. No, it's not a matter of one game. It's a matter of like there's a clear
process.
talent. There's a clear talent discrepancy between the two teams. Look at them.
Right. Yeah, and sometimes that's what happens in a series where it's like sometimes the team with better players just wins.
When was the last
Sometimes that.
sweep we had in the finals?
So last year was 5.
Mm-hmm.
Warriors was 6.
Mm-hmm.
Bucks was 6.
Mm-hmm.
And then Lakers was 6.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Mavs
I
in
don't.
5 is
Yeah,
correct, bro. I'm
yeah, they
telling you,
literally told us.
if
They
if if
told
I
us Mavs in
screenshotted our
5.
TikTok, bro, you would be in utter disbelief. People were like, "Yeah,
Yeah,
nice." One guy was like, "Nice video, buddy." Mavs in 5. I couldn't believe it. I was like, I
I
was in
know.
disbelief.
Yeah, and again, hey, we were being nice to Dallas. Like
That's what
we
I'm
were saying,
saying.
like, hey, they could win too, right? But yeah, that's how it
We
goes.
gave
But
them the
that
benefit
that
of the
threw me off.
doubt,
That was so
bro.
yeah, that threw me off. That was so funny. What the heck were we even saying? That was hilarious.
I
But
was I
like,
was asking what the when the last sweep was in the finals.
yeah, exactly. So I think it was Warriors Cavs 2018, right? And that was another
Okay, yeah,
scenario where it was like one team was clearly better, right?
right,
Like because that was the Cavs team that didn't even have Kyrie, right? That was the one
yeah.
where it was like
That
George
was the one
Hill.
with Jr. where he made the blunder,
Right.
right? Okay, cool. Yeah,
Yeah, J.R. Smith, George Hill, Kevin Love, Tristan Thompson, right? So that was
yeah,
the
yeah,
last sweep we
yeah. Okay,
had.
yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, because I think usually for these finals, like we don't normally get as many like 7 game back and forth series. That doesn't happen in the finals a whole lot, right? I
Right.
feel like usually we see like you know 5 or 6.
Yep. And
It'll
it's a
hit.
treat when you do get game 7. I think we all know and can attest to that. But like,
Right. Yeah, but
it's tough. And I don't even think this finals is on that level of boring, I guess, in terms of not necessarily boring, but
yeah,
lopsidedness in terms of the talent as like the 2018 LeBron, Cavs versus Warriors or whatever. Because Braun was like best player in the league. It is similar. Like you
right.
can say that it's similar because I think Luka is kind of established that he is the
Defense,
best player
his
in the.
defense was probably better than Luka's at that point, though.
Sure, but I'm just saying like in terms of where you would rank them, like
Right. Yeah.
uh,
Yeah.
Braun was the best player in 2018.
Right.
Obviously, Luka is making a case to be the best player for 2024. So the similarities are funny, but I think this Dallas team clearly has some better role players, and Luka has Kyrie as well, so that helps.
But that was the last time we had a sweep. And
Yeah,
because I remember like we had game 1, right, and that was a very close game. And then like you said, you had the timeout thing that
it was
happened,
over from
right?
there, bro.
Yeah,
It
and
was
then
like over.
it was over, right? And
Yeah,
like I don't think anybody seriously thought that Cavs team would win anyways.
it
But
was
it was
close
just like,
though. It was
yeah, it was like
close,
for that first game, it was like, whoa, what the heck is going on here, right?
bro. If
Like
they
that
could have
was nuts.
stole that game, oh my god. Who
Yeah, it might
knows?
have
We
been.
might have gotten a completely different series. Like that could have really changed the tides
Yeah, and that's
instead
the
of a
thing where
sweep,
it's
at least.
And that's the thing where if you're Dallas and it's like, not this is why it would be nice to win game 1, right?
Yeah,
Because
bro.
then, you can start off on the right foot. But not that you can't win a series after winning game 1, and as Miami Heat Network had pointed out in the previous rounds, right? Like, Dallas in the game 1s usually didn't do as well, but they're just not good enough, I think, against the Celtics, right? Like this doesn't really change my perception of the Mavs.
No.
It would more so maybe like not necessarily for me because I already thought they were good, but like it would probably more so elevate people's perceptions of Boston,
Yeah.
right? Like I don't think like if like I guess for Dallas maybe you could have a negative of like come on Luca in terms of the defense, but outside of that I just don't really think it really changes how people feel about Dallas. But there were a lot of I guess analysts that were picking the Mavs to win. I think Vegas had the Celtics as favorites, but I feel like and I could be wrong, but I feel like I do remember seeing a lot of analysts at least on TV, I guess, picking the Mavs, right? But
Yeah.
but yeah, like it was funny though when we got comments, on the TikTok that were saying
Ridiculous,
like,
bro.
"Nice video, buddy."
Like, and with the
But,
Mavs, like Luka's never gonna be a great defender. Like, people have to come to that realization. He's not gonna change even for the finals. Like, you'll see more effort, but it's not gonna be elite by any means necessary. Better than what he has been in the past, but you're just
right.
not gonna see that. And with the Celtics, I think it's gonna just. I'm gonna go back to my show. Good stream. All right, buddy. Appreciate you for coming through. But
Yeah.
with the Celtics, it's like I I think it just validates everything, and I think that's kind of the way that we should talk about it. Is like it's just gonna validate every move that they make,
Yeah.
everything that they do in terms of their execution, everything that they run. That's just all it
Mhm.
comes down to, and it's
Yeah.
gonna put them on the map for people who aren't believers in what they can do with that team. So
Yeah, exactly. Right. Like they were able to kind of, I guess, quote unquote, conquer their, fears of like the late game offense, which, was still kind of rough at times, but, they were able to close the games out as opposed to, before.
yeah, and their late
But
game
also they have,
defense has gotten better too, which is awesome.
yeah, exactly. And Tatum and Brown are also better players than they were, a couple seasons ago,
Sure,
right?
more
Like,
polish, yeah.
Brown is playing the best basketball of his career, right? And like you said, because a lot of people clown the Brown extension, right? Because we talked about this in the previous stream where, a year ago, right, the Celtics, got embarrassed in game 7, right, at home. And Brown has a terrible game, a lot of turnovers, right? And like you said, everybody talked about how horrible he was with his left hand, gets all that money, right? And everybody's like, why are you paying him this money, right? And as you said, and then he more than validated his extension. But again, like, you always re-sign them anyways because like what are you gonna do, let Jalen Brown walk?
Right.
Like that just didn't make any sense, period.
It
Right,
was
like
just the
obviously,
number that was kind of wild to people.
yeah,
That's all.
right. Like obviously it makes the team more expensive, right? Obviously, if let's say it gets to a point where like they don't win anymore, then maybe they do something down the road. But like if you're already about to win a title, they're probably not going to make any significant moves anytime soon, right? There'd be no point.
Right. Yeah. Well, I mean, I think we covered all the bases. I don't think there's any crazy rumors, and we have a we're gonna be recording an episode tomorrow. So if there are any rumors,
Yeah.
we'll probably talk about them in that episode that'll come out Friday. And
Yes,
Friday
get
we'll
ready
have
for
another stream. What'd you
yeah,
say?
get ready for the guys because this one's over.
Yeah, yeah, literally. Get ready for the draft. We'll have a draft stream upcoming as well. We're gonna have a stream for Friday's game as well. Hopefully, that's kind of like the end all be all, where it's like we're wrapping up the series, talking about both teams' off seasons, yada yada yada, stuff like that. But yeah, we
um,
appreciate. What's up?
yeah, and also just one last thing to say. Also,
Sure.
we appreciate all the growth
Oh, you froze, bro.
that we've had because we've had pretty much like our best month in terms of success over the last couple of months as well. So we want to just shout out everybody and appreciate everyone that has come into the streams, that has subscribed and liked all of our content as well. So just wanted to say that we
Yeah.
appreciate it a lot.
Yeah, appreciate you guys. Miami Heat Zone, we appreciate you for all the love that you've shown. Miami Heat Network as well, same for you. And then obviously Homelander, he's been a huge guy. He's been coming through. I think
Keith
ever
Wells,
since we started streams. Yeah, Keith Wells for sure. Let's see the new guy default _23 was awesome having you in here. Good points
oh,
about Tim Hardaway Jr.
yep.
Yeah, so we will see you guys on the next one. Like I said, if you were new here, please don't forget to like and subscribe.